Ohio is great. For roller coasters, I mean. I'm spoiled to live within an easy drive of two fantastic amusement parks for roller coaster enthusiasts in Kings Island and Cedar Point. With that selection, why go anywhere else? Well, the short answer is, I hadn't really. I went all the way to Alton Towers in England, but I haven't even gone 4 hours to Kennywood or Holiday World. Priorities! But what is easily forgotten is the other roller coasters in Ohio. In this video, a combination internet-friendly numbered list and vlog adventure, I will be going to ride every roller coaster I can in Ohio. And now I present a ranked list of all the amusement parks with roller coasters in Ohio. Why am I ranking the parks and not their coasters specifically? If you actually want to travel to any of these parks, you're either like me, hunting for coaster credits regardless of their quality, or you want a full slate of entertainment rather than just 2 minutes on a coaster. So other amenities kinda matter. If you want to just hear about a specific park, check the timestamps. I recorded a lot of the footage in this video in 2023, but then it stretched on to 2024, and then a little bit extra was added in 2025, and now I'm finally publishing it. So if there's some abrupt jumps in the quality of video in this, then it looks like I was recording with multiple different cameras. I probably actually was. If I had to do this again, I would definitely do it better, and in some cases I literally did go back to some of these parks multiple times and replace some of my old footage. But hey, it's finally done. And please see the section at the end about what I didn't ride before commenting about what I missed. It's possible I still missed something in Ohio, but I looked deeper than just reading the RCDB list. I'll also go ahead and spoil this list if the timestamps didn't already. Cedar Point and Kings Island are the top two. What did you expect? But first, the worst. Number 10, Funtimes Fun Park, Alliance. I don't hate this park. The people were nice, but in terms of attractions and attractiveness, this park has nothing.
Alright, here we are, Funtimes Fun Park.
Someone had to be last, and Funtimes is it. It's a bunch of rides for kids in a field and a mini golf course.
Well,
no theming, no shade, it's just what you see is what you get. Funtimes' one roller coaster is an E&F Miler, Serial Serpent. It's fine for a kid's coaster, far from the worst in the state. Milers have pretty good whip and will throw you backwards and forwards on hills if you don't hang on. I'd go so far as to say it's the best E&F Miler in Ohio. Far better than the tiny one at Kings Island, but not nearly as good as the Milers at Waldermere or Knoebels in Pennsylvania. Nine, Memphis Kiddie Park in Cleveland. If you are actually a small child, this is probably the best park on this whole list, as that is specifically who it caters to. While Memphis Kiddie Park may also be just a bunch of rides on a plot of land, it has a history and an atmosphere, and some shade, and a little train around the park. More importantly, this park has attendance. While most of these smaller parks can look like ghost towns, Memphis was packed. I had to wait several cycles to even ride their one coaster, Little Dipper. Get used to the name Little Dipper, by the way, if you want to ride a lot of kiddie coasters. But this Little Dipper is not just some old kiddie coaster, it's the oldest operating steel coaster in the country, and the second oldest coaster period in the state. As for the ride experience itself, it's a cheap substitute for a trip to the chiropractor. You won't get airtime, but you will get abrupt thrusts into your back as you go over the hills. Number 8, Howard's Apples Farm Market, Chagrin Falls. Speaking of old Little Dippers, let's go slightly east of Cleveland for a slightly newer Little Dipper, and the third oldest coaster in the state. This Little Dipper is 2 years younger than Memphis is, and otherwise seems to be identical. What puts this park a little bit higher is the quaint atmosphere. What keeps it low is the very limited operating hours. If you want to ride this coaster, you have to go on weekends in September and October for their fall fair. It was by far the least convenient ride for me to get on this whole list. Let's talk about the fair for a minute though, because apart from the Little Dipper, it's just some silly homemade attractions. And while you might think that's a negative, I think that's absolutely charming. There's farm equipment turned into an automatic return basketball hoop, there's human hamster wheels, There's this classic ring and hook game, slingshots to fling rotten apples at targets, a little corn maze.
Oh, there's another little hay bale maze back here.
And the cutest attraction, rubber duck races. I love this. This is one of my favorite fall fair attractions I've been to, and if you're looking for a fun fall fair and you're in the Cleveland area, I guess I recommend Howard's Apples. 7. Scene 75, Columbus. Next up is the two Scene 75 indoor entertainment centers in Ohio. Alright, Scene 75 Entertainment Center. These both have one major advantage that doesn't help much on my rankings, but does make them the most convenient for guests in the state. As indoor parks, they are open year-round and you don't have to worry about rain, snow, or excessive heat. The Columbus location has one roller coaster.
Nuclear Rush.
It's an SBF Visa Group spinner! There are dozens of these things, but just because a ride has a lot of clones doesn't mean it's bad. And I had never been on any of them before this one. That was better than I expected. I mean, I had pretty darn low expectations for a little, maybe generously 20-foot high coaster inside a shopping mall, but it was okay. It was enjoyable. If I was a kid, I'd like it a lot. Now, I'm just going to say, if the coaster didn't have spinning cars, it would suck. It would be not worth it. But because the cars spin every lap, you're having a slightly different view, facing forward, facing backward, facing sideways, whatever, and because you're spinning as you're going down the, well, I can't really call it a drop, but as you're going down the curved drop, you're thrown around to the sides a little bit, so it's not an entirely forceless coaster. I've been on 6 of them now as of writing this, but this is still the only one in Ohio. These spinners are cheap and surprisingly effective. The cars comfortably fit adults too, giving a distinct edge over a lot of coasters on this list that are for kids. 6. Scene 75, Dayton. And here's the second Scene 75. Here we are, Scene 75 in Dayton. It's larger, has more rides, twice the mini golf, outdoor volleyball courts, more arcade games, and the second largest indoor coaster in Ohio, the largest being Flight of Fear at Kings Island. This one's also an SBF Visa Group coaster, but a much different model. Double the size, double the fun, right? Well, unfortunately this coaster isn't really all that much of an improvement, and only gives you 3 laps instead of 5 on Nuclear Rush. But it is significantly taller, so you do at least get to look down and say, hey, we're kinda high up here, aren't we? If anything though, this one was just kinda disappointing. I'd probably like it better if it had a shorter train, say 3 cars. The drops just really aren't big enough to get the whole 5-car mass moving satisfyingly fast for all that long. Now this main drop I'm looking at here, it's actually okay. While the smaller spinner models have the big sloped downward curve that the whole train is on at the same time. Instead, this model has things like this little bump after the lift hill that just does nothing. Overall, I'd say I actually like this model less than the standard SBF Visa spinners. But just like Nuclear Rush, of course, it has the saving grace of the spinning cars. If the cars didn't spin, this would be one of the most boring roller coasters I've ever been on. I'm ranking the Dayton Scene 75 above Columbus for the rest of the facility, and even if I didn't like it as much, this coaster model is at least marginally unique. There's only a few of these, and you probably haven't been on one. Oh wait, hold up, one more thing. Mario Kart Arcade GP DX. I didn't know we had any of these in the state. 5.5, the Ohio State Fair, Columbus. While most people don't really review traveling rides outside of exceptions like Olympia Looping, the Ohio State Fair has had a pretty consistent coaster lineup, and they are indeed roller coasters in Ohio, so they should probably be on this list. How many different roller coaster credits does the fair offer? Let's go through a quick list. First, they have multiple kiddie coasters. There's a Wacky Worm, a Dragon Wagon, and an Orient Express. And then there's also this thing. This is the smallest roller coaster I have ever seen. Unfortunately, I did not get to ride it. I asked. They would not let me on without a kid. As for the others, I rode them all back when I was a kid. They are not that interesting. I'll have to give the Wacky Worm the edge over the other two for being a little bit more of a traditional coaster. Dragon Wagons pretty much just powered rides and barely build up their own speed. But let's talk about the major thrill coasters. Iron Dragon. This is a Zyklon model, the same or similar to many other Zyklon models. You have the slow wide turns and a few drops. Scary if you don't ride a lot of roller coasters or you're skeptical about the maintenance of traveling rides. Nowhere near as interesting a layout as like a Schwarzkopf model like a Jetstar or Wildcat. Compared to everything else that's been on this list so far though, this is very thrilling.
Crazy Mouse.
Now here's the real star. My hot take here is that Crazy Mouse at the fair is the best wild mouse in Ohio. It's marginally better than Tidal Twist, which I'm talking about in a minute, and it's definitely better than Cedar Point's wild mouse, which I found to be generally pretty disappointing. The best part of a wild mouse is the hairpin turns and the spinning, and Crazy Mouse absolutely delivers on both. There's some wild mice that don't spin, and I question why those were even built because I just don't like them at all. Crazy Mouse has a great layout. You get the non-spinning hairpin laterals first as a teaser and a couple fun dips, but then the second half you really just spin out of control. If you want to spin, you're gonna get your spin. Before someone complains, I'll note that Crazy Mouse was not actually at the fair this year when I'm making the video. I rode it last year at the fair, and Tally Amusements still has it on their ride roster. It was likely left at home this year because there was a bunch of construction at the fair limiting the size of the midway. Iron Dragon had to stand by itself. To quickly discuss a couple other coasters at the state fair, because nope, I'm not done yet, there used to be a different Zyklon coaster at the fair. It went by Avalanche. Not the flat ride Avalanche, a roller coaster called Avalanche. I didn't know it at the time, but this Zyklon actually originally operated at Geauga Lake. I rate it slightly higher than Iron Dragon because I was a kid at the time, so it was probably a little bit smoother and it was definitely a lot scarier because I was a kid at the time. These pictures on screen right now are the only pictures of Avalanche I could find, but it was basically identical to Iron Dragon. Also, apparently in 2019, a year I didn't go to the fair, there was a traveling model of a Chance Toboggan ride at the fair, and I missed it? This is not part of the review because I didn't ride it, I just genuinely want to ride one of these. Probably just once because everyone says they're awful, but it's such a weird model, I want to ride it. So overall, do I recommend going to the fair if you're a coaster enthusiast? Not really. There's a lot of fun things at the fair that aren't amusement rides. There's lumberjack shows, farm animals, fried food. Might even be a band from the 70s you like performing there. Unless there's a rare fair ride you really want to get on, it wouldn't top my list of recommendations just for the rides. Number 5. Back to the whole numbers for more actual permanent attractions in Ohio. The Columbus Zoo and Aquarium, Columbus. Although technically the Columbus Zoo is actually in another city and another county from Columbus, but it's called the Columbus Zoo. Sea Dragon. Sea Dragon is the oldest coaster in Ohio, and it was also, as far as I remember, the first coaster I ever rode besides some kiddie coasters. I rode this all the time back when the water park, now called Zumbizi Bay, was known as Wyandotte Lake. Sea Dragon is practically the only piece of the park to remain unchanged since I was a kid. This and a few other dry rides used to be just part of the admission to Wyandotte Lake, but now they're in a weird sort of dry ride area in between the zoo and the water park, along with the other new coaster I'll get to in a minute. Over there, you can barely see it through the trees, is Sea Dragon, not operating today. Unfortunately, I thought I was going to be able to get a little bit better pictures of it, but I can't. Sea Dragon isn't any sort of extreme ride. Doesn't really give any airtime or anything. It's just a nice old wooden coaster that's mildly thrilling. Tidal Twist. Zamperla Twister Coaster. Alright, here we are at the Columbus Zoo and Aquarium. There's a lot of zoo stuff, but here for one thing, and one thing only, except I'm going to hang around and see other stuff at the zoo after I do this too. It's Tidal Twist. In terms of credits, this ride was new to me. Sea Dragon stood alone when I was a kid. In terms of ride experience, it's nearly identical to the Wild Mouse from the State Fair, just a slightly updated model. As I already said, I like these spinning wild mouse models quite a lot. There's a couple key differences. One, in terms of track layout, well, the brake at the end was a lot rougher on this, holy crap. But on this last hill here, after going around this last curve and going down a hill, the one at the fair has a little bump in the middle, whereas this one doesn't. The other difference is the cars themselves. You can see here, the cars have some significantly larger restraints in terms of headrests and stuff. They also have 4 bucket seats, but does make it feel a little bit different, especially riding it solo, which is probably good because you don't slide around very much. What gets the zoo to number 5 on this list is the quality of other rides around the zoo, as well as, well, the zoo itself. There's even a train and raft ride you can see animals from. Now, all these rides in the zoo are upcharges, as the main attraction is the animals themselves, but you could spend a good day at the zoo if you're trying to treat it as a zoo. However, the zoo is very frustrating if you try to visit it as a theme park, because it's not. The dry amusement rides area is sort of split in half between the zoo and Zambezi Bay, so a lot of the year you can't ride all the rides on the same day without multiple tickets. When I went, the zoo and Tidal Twist were open during the day, and then Zambezi Bay and Sea Dragon were open again in the evening as a separate ticket for a Halloween Fright Night event. So if you're a fellow enthusiast watching this and want to get both credits, good luck with that. Okay, I've talked far too long about a bunch of stuff in Columbus. Let's escape back to the other parts of the state. Number 4, Sluggers and Putters, Canal Fulton. You'd probably raise an eyebrow at this one. A little family entertainment center above a fair with high thrill rides or a zoo combined with a large water park? Yes, it's my list, and I found Sluggers and Putters to be a very nice and surprisingly large family park. There's a lot of trees and plants, there's theming, there's a squished penny machine, a huge bonus point in my book, and a little roller coaster. Okay, the coaster's the weakest part of this all by far. It's just a slightly more thrilling Little Dipper compared to the other dippers on this list. There's not a lot to actually talk about for the coaster. But I'd rather return here as an actual amusement park than quite a lot of other things below it. The zoo is a better zoo. Scene 75 is open in the winter and also closer to me, but I sort of just like Sluggers and Putters. I wish I'd had more time when I was there to do more of the stuff. They've even got somewhat uncommon attractions like a climbing wall. They've got this extremely tiny merry-go-round for very little kids. I talked about the smallest coaster I've ever seen, but how about just the smallest amusement ride I've ever seen? This is just a nice little park, and it's also fairly close to Funtimes Fun Park, so even though I rated that one dead last on the list, if you're just hunting credits, you can easily get both of these at once. Number 3, Stricker's Grove, Ross. Stricker's Grove used to be obscure, but that is no longer the case in enthusiast circles. In addition to several large YouTubers going there in recent years, it was even prominently featured in Roller Coaster magazine this year. And well, I guess it deserves it. Now, some of the hype for Stricker's Grove is because of how few operating days it has a year, so it has become a destination for enthusiasts for its rarity rather than quality. But it has quality. I enjoyed my visit quite a lot, and it has family charm. We got the classic cars, we got the classic boats. I'm gonna pass on the Ferris wheel. It's kinda out in the sun, it'll be really hot. I will take a ride on the carousel before I go though. The day I visited, at least, it was a flat price entry including free soft drinks and, well, free everything besides the food you had to buy. That includes stuff like the putt-putt course. But what really sells the vibe here is the hour lunch break for staff midday. The rides all close down and then reopen an hour later because, no, there's not multiple shifts of staff hired for 4 days a year. There's parks with great family-run vibes, and then there's Stricker's Grove. Also, like many parks, there's a train. Every park worth its salt has a train. Well, Sluggers and Putters doesn't have a train. Maybe I should have rated that a little bit lower. Anyway, the coasters. Teddy Bear. This is a kiddie wooden coaster. While some of the kiddie steel coasters around the state outperform their large park counterparts, this is easily the weakest Woody in the state. Sea Dragon or the one at Kings Island are a lot better, but Teddy Bear is at least inoffensive. The real star here is Tornado. Station of Tornado, and it's just corn. Corn beyond it. Tornado is easily the best coaster in the state that's not at the two big parks. Now, I won't lie, it's not super smooth, and the further back you ride, the rougher it gets. But I had a lot of fun riding it repeatedly near the front. As basically everyone who has ridden this will know, there's one extreme moment of airtime halfway through the ride, and this hits hard everywhere on the train. Now, there's more to a roller coaster than just a single moment, but the rest of the coaster is decent enough that this single crazy ejector moment makes it pretty easy to recommend it. .5 Bonus Round, Geauga Lake. So I never went to famed closed Ohio park Geauga Lake when it was open, but it would absolutely be the third best park in Ohio if it were still open, even if its location and management were, flawed. Additionally, people enjoy chasing down all the coasters that moved from Geauga Lake to other locations, and I have a few of those credits to mention here. As I said previously, I rode their old Zyklon that became a traveling coaster well before the rest of the park closed down. I've been on the SLC Thunderhawk at Michigan's Adventure, and I've been on the Boomerang now known as Flying Cobras at Carowinds. Those unfortunately seem like sort of the bottom half of the relocated rides, even if Thunderhawk is generally considered one of the better SLCs. I'm missing Possessed at Dorney Park, I managed to never ride Firehawk at Kings Island, and I'm missing the real star of the Shuttered show, Dominator at King's Dominion. The last still existing Geauga Lake coasters in India, I don't think I'm going to get that one. Speaking of King's Dominion, there's another former Ohio coaster in Virginia, kinda close to it, the Python Pit, an E&F miler a few miles from Busch Gardens, Williamsburg. I fully intend to get on this whenever I get to Virginia, to further expand my Ohio list. Niagara Amusement Park also now has a Zyklon formerly from the Swordsville, Ohio, and the E&F Miler at Fun Spot America used to be in Ohio, and yada yada yada. There's a kiddie coaster in Texas from Toledo, there's a Zyklon from Cincinnati's Coney Island, part of the Midwest Fair Circuit. It's at least in Indiana and a couple other places. This is going into the weeds, I haven't ridden any of those. Let's get back to the list. In the time since initially recording this video, I have now visited King's Dominion to ride Dominator, as well as picking up the Python Pit credit. There we go, former Ohio coaster Python Pit. And to almost complete the Geauga Lake list, I rode the other two Vekoma Flying Dutchman coasters, Nighthawk at Carowinds and Batwing at Six Flags America, both now being defunct, and the latter being an exact clone of Firehawk. So, while I'm lacking any of the Impulse coasters, I now think X-Flight was actually the best ride at Geauga Lake. The Flying Dutchman models were insane. Number 2, Cedar Point, Sandusky. Number 1, Kings Island, Mason. Oh wow, look, the gigantic parks with over a dozen roller coasters are by far my favorites. Who would have guessed? In the last year, I've kind of been re-evaluating my beliefs. About roller coasters, specifically. I'm not getting too philosophical here. And you know what? I would have said for years that Cedar Point was the best, but I actually like Kings Island more, especially in this ranking based more on vibes than actual coasters. Convenience is actually a huge boon here for a large park, as Kings Island is right on a main highway near a major city, while Cedar Point can be, frankly, a pain to reach. Because of that, Kings Island's a nice park and I end up going there a lot more often. So while Kings Island can also feel less special in a trip to the point, I think there's a final kicker here of you can actually have manageable crowds at Kings Island while Cedar Point is just slammed basically every single day of the year. It's suffering from its success and how great its rides are, but it really lowers the guest experience. Let's look at the two towering blue Giga coasters as a microcosm of the parks. Millennium Forest is one of a kind with beautiful views, but it has some consistently massive lines and doesn't always give the best rides. Orion churns through lines like no one's business, and runs great even on a cold, rainy morning, but it's just less special, it kind of just exists in the park. Cedar Point is a destination. Kings Island is somewhere I actually use a season pass consistently for, because I don't feel exhausted and overwhelmed when I go there. But if you were coming to this list for recommendations, Cedar Point absolutely has the quality and history that easily puts it as a number one if you're only going to a single place. If you're watching this, I don't think that's the kind of recommendation you were looking for. I'm trying to be kind of brief with these large parks because this video is really about the also-rans. Everyone makes videos about the large parks. But since this is about the also-rans, here's my top 5 overlooked attractions at Cedar Point and Kings Island. You don't need me to tell you that the towering 200-plus foot steel edifices at these parks are great. What about some of the attractions that don't dominate the skyline? 5. Adventure Express at Kings Island. This is my favorite mine train coaster. It easily beats all the others I've been on.
Adventure!
There's still rough parts, but compared to the staid layouts of most others, Adventure Express feels like, well, an adventure. Although it has multiple lifts like most mine trains, it feels fast and exciting instead of just meandering. However, imagine how much cooler this ride would be if, when they revamped the theming a couple years back, they also added a drop track at the end. I'm not rating based on potential, but that would make it a great ride. 4. Gemini at Cedar Point. What if we made a mine train really big, and it also races? Gemini is my favorite racing coaster, because of how close the trains are on the turns. Perfectly mirrored racing is boring. If there's a lead, you never make it up. Gemini has the large sweeping turns where one train inevitably catches up to the other, adding excitement. And yes, you can slap hands with the other train, even if you probably shouldn't. Number 3. Cedar Downs Racing Derby. This isn't a roller coaster, but I'm shilling for it anyway. This ride is a merry-go-round in the broad sense, but it shows how presentation changes everything. Instead of a parade of animals in a circle moving slowly up and down, Cedar Downs is a horse race. You move forward and back a little bit to feel like you're gaining or losing ground, and instead of a classic organ, the audio is a radio announcer barking out the happenings of a thundering contest of the track. I love how much more exciting this ride is without fundamentally changing much about the whole merry-go-round concept. Number 2 and number 1, Iron Dragon and the Bat, at both parks. The Bat is number 1, but I'm putting both of these here at the top because I really like aero-suspended coasters and I wish there were more of them. They are very unique rides and I treasure them because eventually they'll be gone. Iron Dragon serves a great role as a more approachable coaster in a park full of giants, and is usually a welcome relief from long lines. Its queue physically cannot hold more than about 30 minutes worth of people. The Bat, on the other hand, is a nature hike to 30 seconds of surprising intensity. There's so much that this model does that's interesting. You do not feel exposed in the slightest sitting down in your swinging tub. You can even take bags with you on ride for Iron Dragon. The ride-ops don't care, they won't fall out. Yet the rides don't really feel that janky. They look janky, sure, but because of the true free swing, you don't knock your head around on the restraints because instead of being jerked into turns, your body and the car move with the momentum. Same applies to bobsled coasters. If we had any of those left in Ohio, I'd absolutely put them on the list as well. What I missed. So I went through this whole list of all the coasters in Ohio. What in Ohio have I not ridden? There's some things I know I missed, and now I'll tell you why. First, the ride I cannot go on. Little Dipper, Tuscarora Park. This ride is only for children. Adults are not allowed. I emailed the park to ask, and their policy is the same as listed on their website. No one over a certain weight, no one over 17. Parents can't ride with kids, children only. Like, maybe I could go there and make a very generous donation to the park, or I could become close personal friends with someone who works there, but I'm gonna write this one off as impossible. I didn't specifically mention the smallest kiddie coasters at Kings Island or Cedar Point. I have in fact ridden all of those, even the ones that normally require you to be a kid or ride with a kid. If you've never been on them, you're not missing much. Great Pumpkin Coaster at Kings Island is the worst coaster in the state. Now, Wilderness Run at Cedar Point is a little bit more interesting by virtue of crossing over a path and itself, but mostly it's notable as the first ever coaster design credited to Intamin. Blue Flash, Haunted Hoochie. So this legendary backyard looping coaster was bought and moved to Ohio along with its smaller sibling Blue 2, when the original owner no longer wanted it. However, I could find no evidence that it has actually ever been available to the public to ride at the Haunted Hoochie. Some coaster tubers rode it and filmed it, but it seems to be solidly just standing but not operating. And that's all. Little Dipper, Blue Flash, Blue 2, oh yeah, and that tiny coaster at the State Fair I mentioned earlier. If you know of any others currently operating in Ohio that I'm missing, leave a comment calling me a liar. I know YouTuber Drew Dirksen built a coaster in his parents' house somewhere in southern Ohio.
I just built a roller coaster that goes through my entire house, and here's why.
I wasn't invited to ride that, but I'm pretty sure that one no longer exists. Thanks for watching this video exploring the lesser discussed coasters of Ohio. Do all that YouTube stuff. Absolutely comment if you found anything about this interesting. Have a nice day. Oh, I almost forgot something. Top Thrill 2, baby! This stupid multi-million-dollar lawn ornament was open for a week, during which I did not rush up to Cedar Point because it was supposed to be more reliable than the first Top Thrill and open for longer. Okay, so in 2025 I did in fact get on Top Thrill 2 and Siren's Curse, and they are both great. More importantly, I got this poster from Coaster Mania in 2024, when the only new credits I got were the kiddie coasters because Top Thrill 2 was closed, and I was waiting until I actually wrote it to put it up. Get out of here, anime. This is a coaster wall now.
There we go.
Thanks for watching. That's actually the end. Bye.